sorrow, smile, and maybe tomorrow.
I used to think my channel was a comedy. Now, I realize it was a tragedy. Joker is a movie I've been looking forward to for a long time. And it didn't disappoint. It was an extremely well done movie, with acting and cinematography of the highest level. It was a work of art. This was not a happy feel-good movie, nor was it a comedy despite its name. And it didn't even feel like a supervillain origin movie either. This movie was about a man descending into madness, and it took a very real take on it. It was not treated like it was a part of a superhero movie franchise, and it took itself very seriously. This movie definitely deserved its R rating, having some extremely gruesome and disturbing scenes. It doesn't have over-the-top gore and violence like Deadpool or Logan did, but each act of violence felt far more disturbing than any of Deadpool's or Logan's ever really did. This is due to how real the scenes were made to feel in Joker, and it felt like you were actually seeing people get murdered. I think it goes without saying at this point, but if you're not someone who can take seeing extreme acts of violence, I would be cautious going into this film. If you were thinking about taking your little kids who like the Joker with you to see it, thinking it's just an R-rated superhero movie, I would think again. The scenes this movie portrays are no laughing matter, and the content is very much for adults. While this movie was extremely well made with amazing acting, it was not a perfect film either. The plot was very bare bones, though it did have a few twists and turns that kept you interested. This movie was a heavily character-driven one, which shouldn't be much of a surprise considering the title of the movie is the name of the character. But if you don't like the character, then you may not like the movie. The character the movie follows is not the charismatic, murderous clown that we all know and love, but a deeply disturbed and tortured individual that is being pushed to his breaking point. If you were expecting a movie about the Joker doing Joker things, you may be disappointed. Even by the end of the movie, this Joker still felt different than the other incarnations, as he was far more humanized, and actually felt like a crazy guy who puts makeup on, rather than a supervillain in a clown costume. This is both a good and a bad thing. It's good because you actually feel like you're watching a transformation that's believable, and the Joker you see in the film is one that you can imagine existing in real life, which gives it far more impact. On the other hand, it almost doesn't feel like the actual Joker, who even though doesn't actually have any superpowers, feels almost like a force of nature. A perfect example is the Joker from The Dark Knight. He seemed to have a genius-level intellect, being able to think multiple steps ahead of everyone, take over the entire crime world of Gotham, infiltrate the police force, corrupt one of Gotham's best, Harvey Dent, and almost take control of the entire city. As he pointed out to Batman, they were like an unstoppable force and an immovable object, and it actually felt like he was. But of course, this does come with the drawback of feeling less real, as no man could actually do everything he did, even though you can argue it's technically possible due to him not using any supernatural powers, but it just isn't feasible. Everything the Joker did in this movie felt like something that could actually happen, and even though he didn't feel like a supervillain, in a way, he felt scarier. Acting-wise, I think Joaquin Phoenix's performance was just about as good as Heath Ledger's. But just by how the characters are set up, I still prefer Heath's version. Joaquin was portraying a man who was pitiable. And this movie was probably the first time I cringed and actually felt embarrassed for the Joker, while Heath was portraying a supervillain who could steal any scene he was in. While this may not have been my favorite incarnation of the Joker, it was still a solid movie that kept me thoroughly entertained. I believe this movie was an 8 out of 10. So, if you're an adult who enjoys movies about the human psyche, mental patients, the problems of society, or are just a big fan of the Joker, I would definitely recommend this movie. Besides, every movie that you watch that you don't like simply makes you feel stranger.